gonna be. No matter what comes our way, we'll be together.
Welcome to Homeschooling Down South. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Kat. We're two Southern homeschooling mamas sharing real talk, resources, and inspiration for life and learning in the Southeast.
Each week, we'll chat with inspiring voices in the homeschool community, highlight must-see nature spots and field trip gems, and share resources from across the region.
Whether you're new to homeschooling or a seasoned pro, pull up a chair and join us as we celebrate the joy, freedom, and community of homeschooling down south.
We'll laugh together, we'll learn together, find the joys in life together, give each other grace and space to be.
Welcome back, everybody. It's a Nature Week, and this week we are talking about Arrowhead Environmental Education Center, which is part of Arrowhead Wildlife Management Authority here in Northwest Georgia in the little town of Arrowhead, right by Rome, Georgia. We took a field trip there.
Our first nature field trip.
Yeah. So we're going to tell you all about it. But first, we just want to let you know what we're thinking about with field trips coming up.
Yeah. We want to do one nature and one experience trip per semester. So some of you may have gone with us last fall to the Weather Education Day at the Braves. That was our first field trip, but that was more experience style. And so this semester we're doing Arrowhead, which we're going to tell you all about. And we're also hosting Science Education Day on April 1st with the Braves. We love this event. It's so much fun. And our numbers are already pretty big for that. But you can find all of our events on Facebook as of right now. We are in the process of looking for another way to hold registration for our field trips because we do understand so many of you are not on social media. So our website is the best place to stay up to date on all that jazz. But yeah, we're going to try to do a nature and an experience field trip every semester.
And we're generally thinking like summer's off. It's the South. We're homeschooling down south, and we all know what summer feels like here. It feels like put me in a pool or a lake. If your field trip's not there, then I'm not coming.
Right.
And so we're thinking really like kind of September through November-ish for our fall, maybe December if we find something really cool that's happening. And then maybe like January through April-ish is when our spring-ish semester field trips will be. Obviously, this one to nature was in the winter. I like going on nature excursions in the winter because I think you see things in nature that you just don't see in the summer when everything's all lush and green. So I actually really like nature in the winter. Yeah.
So
we're excited.
how did you find Arrowhead?
I found Arrowhead like every homeschooling mom finds things. I sat down with my son. I think I talked about this before in the podcast. I took my son on like a little weekend trip before we started the new school year. And I think I want to do something similar moving forward. I kind of called it like our homeschool year planning retreat. And while we were there, I sat and talked to him about what does he want to do this year? What are things that are important to him to learn? What experiences does he want to have? And my sweet boy said, I want to volunteer with the animals. And I thought, you're 5. Nobody is going to let you volunteer with the animals. That would be a huge liability for them. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to find something that will feel like I heard him, but that we could actually do. But I started looking for places for kids to volunteer with animals. And I started with animal shelters, and they all start at something like 15 years old. And they're not letting a 5-year-old come in. And as I was searching, I came across Arrowhead Environmental Education Center, and I knew about Arrowhead. I had actually been there before with another member of our Wild and Free group. We were trying to check out new locations to take our group for meetups. And so we went there one day to hike, and we got there, and Arrowhead is part of Georgia's Wildlife Management Authority, which is part of the Department of Natural Resources, and that's their headquarters for the Northwest region. And so we walked into the main office building, and we asked them if we could go hiking, and they said, no, only if you have a license to either fish, hunt, or in Georgia, through the DNR, you can get like a land use license, which allows you to go hiking on their public lands. Neither of us had that. So we left and we went somewhere else. But I didn't even realize at that time that they had an education center there because it's a little bit tucked back from the main road and the main building. And so when I was looking around and I saw that come up, I didn't really keep thinking about it for that purpose of my son volunteering with animals. But I was like, this is a nature place that I don't know about, but I know exactly where it is. I've been there and it's beautiful. So I'm going to reach out to, her name is Emily Lasasso, and she is the director of education there. I'm going to reach out to her and just ask her a bunch of questions from a homeschooling mom perspective. And so I asked about, do they do groups? Is there a way to come and hike on their property if you don't have licenses, but you're with a homeschooling group? And I just tossed in there at the end. Also, my son he's 5. He really wants to volunteer with animals. And I am struggling to find something for him. Do you have any suggestions for me? Was my question to her. And she wrote back and said, most places aren't going to let a 5-year-old volunteer. But if you want to come in one morning when I'm opening up, he's welcome to shadow me as I wake our animals up and feed them breakfast. And so I said yes, thinking we'd be there for 20 minutes and she would just let him watch her. We were there for 2.5 hours. Emmy and her colleague Cynthia were so generous with their time and their own love for animals. And they let him feed animals that were safe for him to do so. They let him help clean. They taught him about how if you want to work with animals, it's not always the most glamorous things. You're going to be cleaning up their waste. And he got into the gopher turtles habitat and was fixing the sand and helping them clean out the things that they had left behind. He had the best time. And then they took us on a hike.
That's so cool.
The 2 of them and the 2 of us, they took us on a hike. They were telling us about birds that we saw. I knew it was a pretty drive, but it wasn't until I was out on the hike that I was just in complete awe of how beautiful this property is, how untouched it is. It's just gorgeous. And I said, as we were leaving, I want to do more here. I want to come back. I want to bring people in my homeschool community here to meet you, to see this property, to meet these animals. And at the end, when I said, y'all have just been like so generous with your time, they said, this is how we were as kids. We loved animals, we were intrigued by nature, and we just see ourselves in this little boy, and we want to foster that in the next generation. And that's where our relationship started, and it's grown from there. And I think around that time, I brought up to you, this could be a possibility for the podcast. We were just, I think, at the
Yeah.
very beginning of talking about, should we do field trips? I went to Arrowhead for the first time like a week or 2 before we went to the Braves Weather Education Day. And so we were still like not sure. And about a month later, they were hosting a night hike. And my son had been asking to use his headlamp and go out at night. And I don't even know that he really understood what a night hike was. He just wanted to be in the dark with his headlamp that he doesn't get to use unless we're camping.
Fair.
And so we went to this educational program, and it wasn't specifically for homeschoolers, but it was certainly a part of my homeschool that week, that month, this year. That will be a significant milestone memory. I don't know exactly what word I'm looking for, but it will be like a significant thing from this year's homeschool. They did an educational program about nocturnal birds and raptors and specifically owls. And the retired education director from Arrowhead is now a raptor rescuer in Georgia. She's like one of the top licensed people that if you were driving and you found an owl that had been injured, or you were out on a hike and you found a hawk that had been injured or was sick, and you called the DNR, she's probably who they would call, even not in our region right up here in Northwest Georgia. She's like one of the top people. And so she brought a bunch of her birds and did a whole presentation and talk in their environmental education center. And then Emmy took us on a night hike to go look for what we were specifically looking for. We left at dusk. This was in October. And what she was taking us to was hoping that we would get to see, they have beavers that are building a huge dam on the property. And she has all these stories about the beavers causing havoc with the different rangers. Are they called rangers at the Wildlife Management
Girl, this
Authority?
is your lane. I have no idea. I will just be like, oh, yeah, totally.
The team, causing havoc with the team that's trying to take care of the land. They keep on moving the beaver dam or asking them to move along, and then they keep rebuilding. Anyways, we were off to try to find the beavers. She took us to the dam. The beavers were not out, probably because we were loud coming up. And by we were loud, I don't mean the entire group of night hikers. I mean my family specifically was loud. But we did hear coyotes. Yeah.
Yeah, creepy.
There was a group of young ladies from Berry College there, and they were there because one of their friends is super passionate about the environment and creation, and so all her friends, like, came with her to this thing because she really wanted to go, and she didn't wanna go alone, but they were not into nature.
Mm,
It felt like if I had brought you, and
yeah.
they were not happy about the coyote sounds. But my son, he just kept telling them, like, "You're gonna be okay. We're all together. Everything's fine." And when we got to the end, he looked at them and he said, "You did it. You didn't think you could do it, and you did it. I'm so proud of you." This
That's
5-year-old. And they were like, "Okay, he's the highlight of our time here
that's
because
hysterical.
he's the question king also. He asked all kinds of questions. But
Always.
the night hike was I loved it. It was so much fun. We learned a lot, but it was also fun because we had been there before with Emmy. He sort of knew her and felt really comfortable, and she just really has a heart for sharing her love of wildlife and nature and getting people out into it, and I don't think that that's just limited with kids,
Right.
but she really is passionate about doing it with kids. So after that night hike is when I said, "Okay, Kayla, I really think Arrowhead is the place." There were a couple other things that tugged at my heartstrings for wanting us to do a field trip there, and one of them was they are just kinda tucked away, and it would be easy to not know about them.
Yeah.
And I know they do a lot of programs where they go into the schools, and they'll bring, like, an educational animal or 2 and have a talk, but I don't know that they get a lot of people out on the property, and the property is truly stunning. If you are in the area, it is worth getting a kid's fishing license or
Oh my
a
gosh. My son is like, we are getting the licenses. Dad and I are going fishing. He has already made that known. As soon as it starts warming up, they are going fishing.
yeah, it's a beautiful place to go fishing, but even just the land use, because then you can go hiking. You do need to be aware because it's Wildlife Management Authority. You do have to be aware of their hunting seasons and their hunting hours because you don't wanna be, like, just out there traipsing around during hunting, but that's all published information, like, you can access it and you can find that out. But I just had a heart for really wanting to bring people into them because they're such great educators, they're so passionate, and the space is beautiful, and I just really wanted us to bring people there. So I know people who are listening who are maybe a couple hours away from Northwest Georgia are thinking like, "I don't know that I would go on this field trip or go there."
Okay, but one of the groups that joined us for this field trip, they drove, I think she said an hour 30, hour 40
Yeah,
to get there.
and it was worth it, I'm
Yeah.
sure. And we'll get into the field trip, but I just wanna say, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, "Well, like, this sounds like kind of like a remote area in Northwest Georgia, I don't know if I'm gonna end up there." But what I hope you hear is every state has a Department of Natural Resources. This is like an untapped homeschooling gem
Mhm.
because this isn't some big nature center that everybody knows about. That one-on-one experience that my son got was because these people are so truly dedicated. Not that people at another nature center wouldn't be, but they might not have the time.
He also got to do it because you asked. And I think that's something that you and I are both very passionate about encouraging families and encouraging parents to do is make the ask because here's the thing. The answer will always be no if you don't ask the question. But if you ask the question, there's a chance the answer could be yes. And who knows, maybe they've never had that question before, but now they know, hey, this is something that we can feasibly do if there are families that need it. And like how cool is it that this idea of this thing of him coming and helping wasn't an organized program. It wasn't anything that like was on their list of offerings, but because you asked, they're like, yeah, sure, let's do it. I
Yeah.
think that's really cool that you in theory just created something brand new that didn't exist.
Well, and then the ask has ripple effects,
Yeah.
right? If I hadn't asked, we wouldn't have ended up there. I saw the poster about the night hike while we were there. We went on the night hike, which was an incredible experience for our family. That confirmed for me that it was the right thing for us for homeschooling down south, and then we created this field trip, and working with Emmy was honestly a dream. I've put together a lot of field trips as a group leader of a wild and free group, and working with Emmy was so easy
Yeah.
and, pleasant. It was a really pleasant experience. It was very affordable,
Very.
$5 a head,
Yep.
and it felt good too to ask her, because we're homeschoolers and we're more flexible, "What would you like to do? When would you like to do this?" And she said, "Oh my goodness, winter is our slow time. It would be lovely to be able to say, 'Look, we had kids here learning in the educational center in January when we usually don't book anything with the schools.'" And I was like, "We can do that. That's easy." And again, I love taking kids into nature in the winter because I think it's important for them to see landscapes in all 4 seasons, and so I was like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it in the afternoon,
Right, right.
not in the morning." Usually I set up field trips in the morning. That's sort of my preference, but when it's nature and it's winter, I am more likely to say, "Let's do early afternoon."
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So let's talk about the field trip
yeah.
itself because this was my first time at Arrowhead, and they have a schoolroom situation. It's not a schoolroom, but a room, a dedicated education room that has lots of taxidermied animals. It has the live animals. And when we walked in, they had 2 tables, one set up with different pelts and one set up with different skulls. And at the time, we didn't know what that was about, but the kids were able to go and like touch the pelts and see all the animals. And it was interesting to me because like the turtles and stuff, I mean, they're just out. They're not behind glass.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, no, don't touch the turtle. Don't touch the
The
turtle.
gopher
That is a live
turtles?
turtle.
Yeah. And they also now have an outdoor. It was too cold the day we were there, but they also have, like, an outdoor area now
Mm,
that is gonna be really cool for people to go visit and see them just wandering around
yeah.
outside. Yeah, and they're huge.
Yeah. Yeah, it was cool. And they had baby alligators, which I thoroughly enjoyed because I think baby alligators are adorable. And did they have frogs?
They have frogs, they have snakes. Kayla was gonna skip over that part.
I was. I sure was.
They have all kinds of, like, insects.
Lizards.
Yeah,
Had
yeah.
like a lizard.
So they have all of these different, mostly reptiles and fish and the gators.
Yeah.
And the baby gators, it's cool. They partner with a program in Southern Georgia. Like, once those baby gators grow to a certain size, they go back to Southern Georgia, and then the education center gets baby alligators back. Yeah, so the kids got to kind of walk around and explore.
Yeah. And then when they started, we found out what the pelts and the skulls were for. They did a little game and you would try to match each each pelt was numbered and each skull was numbered. And so you'd go over, okay, number 1 pelt, what animal do we think it is? Now go over to the skull table, what skull belongs to that animal? And it was really cute seeing the kids comparing notes and, getting all into it. And I noticed a lot of like the older kids in particular, they were really paying attention to what does the tail look like? What about the face, like the nose and the ears? And that was really cool to see them, really using all the things that they have learned to try to figure that out.
Yeah, I heard a lot of the older kids talking about, well, it can't be this because this kind of animal doesn't need teeth like that. They just really were thinking about all the things they know about animals. And the other thing I really appreciated is that it was all native animals.
Yeah.
And so I this is something that I am super passionate about. Is I'm all for loving all the animal. My son loves every animal. He can't pick a favorite. I'm all for that, but I need my child to know about the animals that live around him,
Yeah.
both from a awareness, but also from a, like, this is where we're rooted, and
Yeah.
this is what God has asked us to steward here where we are. And so I love a place that really focuses on native animals, native plants, and they do that so beautifully and well, and they make that exciting.
Yeah. Well, and What I loved, one of the moments I loved the most when she was going over the results of the comparison and she held up the beaver pelt. She was like, what do we notice about this pelt? And or what do we think the animal who this belongs to looks like? And all the kids were like, it's fat. Because it was like the only one that was kind of like bulbous.
Yes.
But it was just so cute. Like they all recognized like this is probably this animal. And I even heard some of the moms talking about they didn't realize we had certain animals locally.
Yeah.
So that was really neat. Just like hearing the kids be able to express their knowledge of herbivores and omnivores and carnivores in real life application situations like that was really cool.
Yeah. And you can really tell that they're used to presenting and educating kids. Like they were rolling with the questions and asking their questions in ways that allowed the kids to think,
Yeah.
but also be successful in making guesses and answering. And it was fun to see the kids be surprised by some of the animals, but also feel really proud when they had figured it out on their
Yeah.
own.
Well, and then they kind of she talked a little bit about the taxidermied birds specifically. And one of the things that I found so fascinating is how they could tell the age of the bald eagle by the coloring on its face. And I just think that was so cool to learn while looking at a real life taxidermied juvenile bald eagle, you know? So I enjoyed, you don't get to see that. We did at Reflection Writing Arboretum, we did get to see a bald eagle in real life, but this was cool because you got to see them at all different stages and you could really get up close and personal and look at the detail of their faces and their wings and stuff like that.
Yeah. And it was super cool for one of the families that was there. Their family had recently seen an eagle on their property, but they didn't think it was an eagle because of the coloring. And
Yeah.
so they actually, in having that conversation with Cynthia, were able to realize that what they had seen was a bald eagle. It just was a young bald eagle, and its head hadn't changed colors yet.
Yeah.
And it was fun to watch them have this, like, aha moment about something that they had experienced elsewhere. It was a really uplifting
Yeah.
time together.
And then they did bring out some of the animals for us to touch. They did not, to my dismay, bring out the baby alligators because we had recently experienced a very intense cold spell and the alligators were kind of having trouble acclimating. But she did bring out the turtles. Were you there at it?
No, so we should let everybody know that after the pelt and skull demonstration, my son and I had to sneak away, which was really hard, but we had a medical thing going on, and there was an opportunity to get him seen right then, and
It wasn't a contagious thing.
it wasn't a
Cat
contagious
is not
thing.
irresponsible like
I'm
that.
not. I'm the last person. No, it was like an ouchie that we needed to have looked at, and the place that we needed to have it looked at was gonna be closed the following day and all weekend. This was a Thursday afternoon, and this thing happened on our way. And so I had to put on my mom mode before anything else, and he was very unhappy because this might be his favorite place on earth, and he
Yeah.
loves Emmy and Cynthia, and he finally got to be there with his friends, and we actually walked out the door, and he said, "Leave me here." And I
No.
was like, "But it's your body that needs to go."
Right. Right. That is not possible.
I don't wanna leave either. So I actually don't know what happens next,
Okay.
but I'm
Well,
excited. I'm excited.
she brought out animals for the kids to touch. She brought out turtles. I think she brought out 2 turtles. And then she did bring out a snake. And it was really funny because as she was walking around letting the kids touch it, I just kind of like slinked behind a couple of the moms, trying with my body to let her know I was not interested.
I've
But
seen you do this before at other
yes,
nature centers, so I'm aware of
yes,
this behavior, and it is pretty, like, I'm trying to be chill about the fact that I'm not chill about
right.
that.
She was not picking up what I was laying down. So she proceeds to try to go around the mom that I was hiding behind and walk towards me. And I just said, "Oh, no, no, no. I'm good. Thank you so much." She just very politely went the other way. But yeah, the kids did get to touch some animals, which they enjoyed, and they got to ask questions about them. And one of the turtles was injured. its back leg was. And so she talked a little about that because the kids noticed that does not look like a normal turtle leg. So she was able to talk a little bit about that. And then she took us on a hike, and it was the property was beautiful. I would love to see it in full bloom because it is the winter. And so, no green. But one of the first things that we actually talked about was the controlled burns that they do. And it was really cool because she asked the kids, why would we burn? And thinking about the older kids specifically, we had some like 14 to 16-year-olds with us. They knew the answers, why you would burn and why the ash is beneficial for the soil and to control the vines. And it was really neat hearing the children get to respond to that. The other thing we got to see on the hike, which was really cool, was how the otters move around.
Yeah.
And they have these otter dens that they know where they exist. And you could see where the otters slide into the water or slide up out of the water. And so when we would come up on a place that could be, she would ask the kids, what do we think is happening here? And the kids would say, the otters are sliding.
Isn't that so cool? It's maybe my favorite thing.
Yeah.
About
or
being
she
there.
would say, do we think the otters would come up through here? And the kids would say, no, it's too steep. So they were really paying attention and getting into it. And the moms were all like, okay, well, this is fabulous. Where are the otters? We would like to see the otters. We did not, unfortunately, get to see the otters. However,
never seen an otter.
Yeah.
With all the otter trails.
To give you an indication of how sticky this was, we talk about music being sticky. Well, I think experiences are sticky too.
Yeah.
We recently had a Wild and Free meetup. And on the hike, there was this hill, this kind of cliff thing that we stopped and let the kids climb up, and then they were sliding down.
Yep.
And when I asked my child afterward what her favorite part of the meetup was, her answer was sliding down the hill like the otters.
Yep.
So she remembers that that's what they do. And so that to me, success.
Yeah.
That was a really cool thing to her, and she's held on to that. And so then we came back after the hike. The property is truly beautiful. And she talked a lot about what they do conservation-wise. And she even pointed out, see, this pond is grown up more than this pond, and this is why. And she talked about when the lake is down, when they drain it or whatever, they'll throw seed out so that it can grow. Stuff can grow for the animals. So all around, it was just really informative in regards to how they manage the property, how their property is beneficial to the wildlife. Then we got to this point, and they have all these gourds that have been made into these birdhouses for the purple martins. And for me, that was special because my grandfather, that's what he did. He would take gourds and make them into birdhouses. And so he had gourds hanging all over his property. We all now have gourds that were from his property. And so they talked a lot about the purple martins and how they, what they look like and how they all live in these, little houses and stuff. And so that was really neat. And then we all came back and they stood around, answering questions from the kids and chatting. And it was really lovely how personable they were.
Yes.
It didn't feel stuffy. It didn't feel like it was this corporate thing. Okay, and now we're done and you may leave. And we stood around chatting. Some of the kids went back in to go to the bathroom. And it felt very on brand for us.
Yeah.
But two, I kept hearing, I live 10 minutes down the road and I didn't even know this was here.
Yes.
This was really cool. I'm so glad we made the drive. Thinking about the group that made the drive, I'm so glad we made the drive because this was really neat. And so I'm really glad that this was our inaugural nature field trip.
Me too. And it's the kind of thing that when you go and you do it, you think to yourself, this is why I homeschool.
Oh my gosh, 1,000%.
This is why I do this, because I want my kid to have this smaller opportunity to have this one-on-one conversation with someone who is in a field that my kid thinks he might want to work in someday. Not because I'm trying to push him into that, but because I want him to have exposure to it. I don't want him to go to school for it for 10 years and then finally get out in the field and realize he hates it.
Yeah.
I want him to understand what it is before he puts any time or money into it. I want learning to come from someone who is passionate and dedicated and is hands-on and doing it every day. I want learning to come from someone who does see these kids as reflections of who they were when they were young. And there's just nothing quite like being able to stand next to your kid while they have an aha moment or while they see something in nature, or even if it's not in nature, if it's a non-nature experience, but having wonder,
Mm-hmm.
saying, "What? An otter made that trail?" I mean, the day that we went hiking with them, and she was showing us how she could tell the difference between the otter trails and the muskrat trails
Yeah.
because there are both. And they would hear a bird and they were like, "That's this bird." They couldn't see it. They just were hearing it. And it just was it's so fun to be with them, and they're so knowledgeable. And I will also say this is one of those places where I'm like, you got to go back to the same place over and over
Yep.
again. And nature to me is the prime example of that because you were just saying you want to go back when it's spring and it's beautiful. I haven't seen it yet in the spring, but I've seen it in summer, fall, and winter because we go back on a regular basis. We were going once a month and doing some nature study there, and we plan to pick that back up again. And we've also gone just as a family because we do have the license. So we've gone as a family, just where are we going to go hike? And what I like about it is it's beautiful, but it's also not a hard hike.
Yeah.
It's not up a mountain. It's not down cliffs. You're not rock scrabbling. It's a comfortable hike no matter what your fitness level is or your hiking comfort is. And yet you still get to see all this beauty. And I got to tell you, it's beautiful year round.
Yeah.
It's stunning. And these little things that people don't know about them, and that's part of our mission here is to help you find out about the things that are available to you, but also that are just special,
Yeah.
and you get to participate in them in a really different way because of homeschooling.
And I had the thought when we were specifically standing out on the hike talking about the controlled burns, I was so grateful for these older children who came because my younger kids who think these older kids are so cool can see them knowing all this stuff about the controlled burns. And now they're getting interested in what are they talking about? Now they're looking at the burn line on the tree. They're listening to these kids that they think are so cool. And, we talk about outsourcing. I kind of feel like this is a little bit of outsourcing for learning for my kids because they're learning from their peers. And that's what makes me giggle so much. I used to get annoyed, but now I just laugh when people are like, but what about socialization? Friend, my kid's going on field trips with high schoolers.
Yeah.
My kid is learning from high schoolers
Yeah.
who have learned this stuff,
Yeah.
and getting to do this alongside, getting to have these educational experiences alongside kids of all different ages. I mean, our youngest at that field trip was 2.
Mhm.
And I think our oldest was 16 or
Mhm.
17. That is the range that we had. And then, of course, plus the moms. And so that to me is so special. And I'm so thankful that these moms with older kids are willing to bring them to these
Yeah.
field trips
Yeah.
because they really are for all ages and it benefits all ages.
It does. I'm gonna nerd out for a second. But one of the things that I got super interested in studying when I was studying learning was what happens when kids of different ages are learning together. And it's beneficial in the learning for everybody because as you were talking about, the younger kids catch that older kids' enthusiasm, but also older kids say things about the information about what they're learning about in a way that is still kid-like and oftentimes more accessible than how an adult would share that information. But also, when older kids realize that little kids are listening to them and they start telling what they know, there is nothing more powerful for your brain in learning something than when you are teaching it to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they don't realize that's what they're doing, they are engaged in that activity. That's why like telling back or narration is such a powerful learning tool because then you imprint it on your brain. You make meaning of that information in your way, not remembering and regurgitating what someone else said about it. And it's everybody is learning and growing together.
And I also think wonder is contagious.
Yes.
And I think for the older kids, seeing the younger kids experience that wonder
Yeah.
reminds them of how cool it is,
Yeah. And that it's okay to be in awe of it. instead of have to be like, I'm a cool teenager. They're like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
it is really cool that that's an
Yes.
otter track. It is really cool that they're doing these burns. And I'm even thinking about when we were at our last Wild and Free meetup, one of the kids who had been on that field trip saw a tree that had burn marks and stopped us on the trail to point it out and talk about it. And so it's not just that like the wonder is contagious in that moment. The wonder continues to be contagious as they keep experiencing things.
And so we decided that we wanted to start hearing straight from the kids what they enjoyed, what wonder they
Now,
experienced.
don't take our word for it.
Yeah, so we wanted you to hear direct from their mouths what they thought was cool about the field trip. So let's hear from some of our students. What was your favorite thing about the Arrowhead field trip?
Seeing the otter trails. I like seeing the animals at Arrowhead, especially the baby crocodiles.
I really like being out in the wilderness, beautiful views out there, so much wildlife, and the guides were incredibly helpful and taught us a lot about the wildlife in the area, and they're just absolutely amazing people in an absolutely amazing area.
I like how we got to play the game trying to match the skulls and the fur of the animals together, and I like how we got to touch and look at the animals.
All the animals there inside Cynthia is a bird specialist, and she knows a lot about birds. Miss Emmy just knows a lot about everything.
It was really informational, and there's a lot of information on the animals. Everybody there was really nice, and it was a really nice hike. They really explained on why everything's there.
I liked the part where we did the match the skulls to the skins, and I also like going on the hike and seeing the otter trails.
That was so sweet. I love hearing
so
their little
sweet.
voices talk about it.
Yeah. And just you can hear the excitement in their voices still. And some of those were a week later
Yeah.
that we got to ask them. And I'm really excited for the team there to hear too
Yes.
how many kids just really were touched by their, like you said, they were just so personable.
Well, and the comment about the guides themselves, like that is a student making that comment.
Yeah.
Like these were not scripted. I mean, from the time of, hey, can I record you from this? Do I have consent from mom? Was maybe, I don't know, 5 minutes. So they didn't even have time to really, formulate an answer. And so I just thought it was really touching that he recognized how great the guides were.
It really makes us want to keep doing
Yeah.
these field trips to hear the kids talk about what was special to them.
Well, and then you start to hear the trend of multiple kids saying the otter trails, the pelt and skull matching game. And I think that's great for the organization to hear that, yes, this was effective. This was something that stuck with the kids.
Yeah, and just to also remember like what resonates with kids. And
Yeah.
no two kids are the same, and part of why we homeschool is so that we can have these responsive and individualized learning experiences and education, but at the same time, there are things that across different learning styles, across different personalities are going to just really click
Yeah.
with kids. And this was also fun because oftentimes when you're setting up a field trip as a homeschooler for groups, you get asked, what are you studying? What do you want me to talk about? And it's fun to look back, especially at someone who is super nerdy and passionate and excited and they're just doing the thing they love and say, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Plan the educational program of your dreams
Yeah.
because we're not using one curriculum. We don't have one thing we're studying right now. Everyone's approaching this from their different homeschools at different points and their different ages. And I think that means you get these really cool programs because they're not being restricted. They're not boxed in. And so
Yeah.
who knows, that might be something they do with other kids' programs, or maybe they got to try things that they've never
Yeah.
done before.
Yeah.
And now they get to hear that feedback. I'm so excited to share this episode with them
Yeah.
and have them hear the kids talk about how much they enjoyed just being with Emmy and Cynthia.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's so impactful. And I don't know, I'm constantly amazed as someone who did not come to homeschool in the aesthetic, heartwarming way. Someone who came to homeschooling on a very reluctant path, I'm just like, wow, this is such a gift. This is such a gift that my kids get to experience stuff like this and that we get to go adventuring like this. And frankly, if I'm just being honest, I'm also so grateful for you because I wouldn't do any of that. We were at our wild and free hike yesterday, and this sweet lady at the visitor center gave me a map, and I was like, oh, thank you, but I wouldn't be here without my friend Kat, and she knows where to go, so I don't need this, but thank you. So, and Arrowhead, I would never, I would have no reason to ever be researching that kind of thing. But because you did, now my kids have gotten to have that experience, and that is why we are not meant to do this alone.
Correct.
That is why we need community. And that is the benefit of doing it together is I'm not going to Arrowhead on my own.
Yeah.
I might now, but I wouldn't have before.
And it goes both ways. I took my son to the Lego Discovery Center last month, which when we decided we were going to do a podcast, it was one of the things that we had talked about being because they had a homeschool month and you found out about it at the end of the month and I couldn't go. And then shortly after we decided, let's do a podcast. And so then you didn't really tell me that much about it because we knew we were going to talk about it.
Yeah.
And it was one of our first recordings. It was one of our first episodes. And so I've been waiting and waiting and waiting to finally go. And we finally did. And he had the best time. And it's not something I would have found on my own. And even if I had, I don't know that the information online would have compelled me.
Yeah.
But your stories did. And so, yeah, we're not meant to do this alone. And it's special because we get to do it together. We get to share it with each other. We get to share it with other families now. And for me, the thing that it always comes back to with homeschooling is, and then I got to be there for it.
Yeah.
Because Arrowhead does go into schools.
Yeah.
And schools take field trips to all these places that we've talked about, really. All the nature spots, all the experiences. There's school field trips. But we get to be there.
Yeah.
And we get to be there together.
Yeah.
And it's the gift of homeschooling that I didn't see coming.
So, do you have a specific win from this trip, from this field trip?
Well, for me, not from the field trip, because my win was just that we got to the medical facility and it wasn't a medical crisis. It just was a keep an eye on this. But I will say, when we did the night hike, it was actually a really big win for my family. We actually had been having a couple of really rough weeks in our family. Nothing had happened, but we just were not all on the same page. We were having some behavioral issues. We weren't feeling like things were clicking in some of the other spaces that we have homeschool community. And we went and did this thing as a family. And I was reminded of who my son is. I had been in a space of trying to fix it. And then we went on this night hike at Arrowhead and he came alive and he was himself. And I was reminded he's not anybody else's kid. And I needed to turn off some of the noise and just be his mom. And it being there at Arrowhead in the beautiful space that it is, but also being there with these educators. And I feel horrible that I cannot remember the name of the woman who runs the raptor rescue. But the way that she poured into my son that night and the response from Emmy and the back and forth that they had and me seeing him interact with her just reminded me, this is why I homeschool, because I see my son in a way no one else can. And I've got to let go of me being worried about what everyone else is thinking of him or thinking of me. That's really what it is, right?
Yeah.
Thinking of me because of the behavior that's happening and get back to doing these things that make him come alive. And that doesn't mean we ignore the behavior things. We still need to work on it. But I had maybe been so focused on doing all that I wasn't giving him this time he needs in nature with wildlife, asking questions of someone who really wants to engage with him. And I've been able to sort of use it almost as like a checkpoint of when things are kind of spiraling a little bit or I feel them slipping, I'm like, ooh, do we need a night hike? Obviously, we're not always going on a night hike, but it's sort of now my check-in.
Yeah.
That night hike changed things. And the drive home, my husband and I looked at each other and realized we had not been responding to the issues the way that our son needed us to, the way that God wants us to for this image bearer. We were responding in ways that other people were telling us we should.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a really sweet memory. The woman with the raptor rescue, she was being pretty protective of the birds. She had an owl a great horned owl, which I adore because I'm a Kennesaw State
Hooty
alum.
hoo.
Hooty hoo. And she was being pretty protective. People wanted to take pictures and she was kind of not really letting people. And so I kind of whispered to my son, I was like, you're not going to get to go up there. And then he had questions during the whole program. This is the very end of the program. He had lots and lots of questions, and she had a couple times had to ask him to hold his questions. Well, at the very end, she looked at him. She asked him his name. He told her. She invited him up. She got down on the ground, holding the bird on her arm, and let him stand right next to. Made sure I got a good picture. Knelt there and talked to him for a pretty long while. Just him and her having this one-on-one conversation about how much he loves animals and how much he wants to take care of them for the rest of his life. I'm gonna get like emotional, and it was healing.
Yeah. Yeah. And now you have that marker, that Ebenezer that we've talked about before
Yep.
of like that was healing for your mama heart. That was God's little TLC for your mama heart.
Yep.
But it was also, I guarantee you your son would not be emotional on this level about
No.
it because he doesn't see it like that.
No.
But in some ways, I think it was probably, I remember stories from that time and it had been a little rough. So that probably felt very restorative for him as well.
Yeah.
And now that place is special. And we talk about the body keeps the score.
Yeah.
That place will give him that feeling of comfort and rest and belonging. And, I love that when he is grown, that impact that these ladies have had on him will last.
Yeah.
And, that's part of their legacy too.
Yeah. And I love that then we got to turn around and share it with other people that we love and that we don't even know.
Yeah,
We had
some new friends came.
strangers come. So that's the other win is that
agreed.
Is that so many people came out on this cold day in January and got to experience this place that means so much to us. We had lots of our friends there. I'm so glad. And our friends that were there were all people that just really, I was like, oh, I hope they come because they love nature so much and their kids love nature. But the fact that we had strangers come to this kind of rural, remote spot to trust us, I had to give some pretty detailed directions to everyone.
Yeah.
And that they came and they showed up and that they had a great time is so rewarding.
Yeah. And now that group is joining us for the Science Education Day at the Braves as well.
Yeah.
And I think you and our heart is to create a community of not just in our local community, but the broader Southeast to make this homeschool journey more accessible, to make it feel less alone. And those people who may live in these rural areas or have smaller groups, because that's one thing that the woman who brought that group expressed to me is we love to adventure, but so often we don't meet numbers.
Yep.
They need more numbers. So, would y'all be interested in doing stuff like that so that we can come along? And I was like, girl, if you have an adventure come up that you want us to take a look at, send it our way.
Yeah.
Because we are all about finding out everything there is to do, because we don't want anyone to ever feel like you don't have anything to fill your calendar with. I want your biggest problem to be what to say no to.
Yes.
That is my goal. I want you to have to struggle to figure out what to say no to.
Yep.
Because there's so much going on.
And then also we're here to help encourage you that it's okay to say no to those things that don't fit. But yes, we want you to not feel like, oh, I'm homeschooling and so I'm just alone and there's nothing to do and my kids are missing out. That's not it. The reality is you're going to have to figure out what to say no to, and we're going to help you get there. And I will say one of the big challenges in homeschooling and getting to go do the things so that you don't feel like you're missing out, and it's not true of everywhere, but so many places do have these head counts.
Yeah.
And it's because they are used to programming for classes, school
Yeah.
classes, and those have a pretty standard size. And that is one of the more frustrating things when you're leading a group or you're trying to find these experiences for your kids is meeting those headcount minimums. And so that's one of the barriers that we're working to break down, whether it's through our field trips or just through making sure if you are out there planning field trips in your area and you have a program or a group and you need more people to know about you, like, please reach out to us. We want to talk to you. We want to shine the spotlight on you.
Yeah.
So
I love that. And in the spirit of making sure that you guys know what all is going on, by the time this episode comes out, Great Homeschool Convention in Greenville, South Carolina is going to be right around the corner. It is March 19th through the 21st, and we will be there. We would love to see you guys. In May 7th through 9th is Teach Them Diligently in Pigeon Forge. And then July 24th and 25th is Southeast Homeschool Expo, and we're actually going to be presenting at that expo. We're going to have a booth. And then if you're local, we'll also be at the Northwest Georgia Homeschool Expo on April 18th. And we'll have all the details for all those on our website, on our social media. So make sure to check that out. But we just wanted to make sure you guys had the dates to put on your calendar because, again, we want to give you the option to say no if that's what you need to do. But we want you to have the availability to do all of the things.
yes. So if you're at any of those places, please come find us. Please come say hello.
Yeah.
We want to chat with you.
But when we're not conferencing, Kat, where can they find you?
I'm at Recreating Camp on Facebook and Instagram. And Kayla, where can they find you?
I'm at ScratchMadeSimple _ on Instagram and at ScratchMadeSimple on TikTok. And you can find us at Homeschooling Down South on all the socials.
And if you liked today's episode, could you please give us a 5-star rating and review wherever you're listening? And we would also love to start hearing from you. So leave a comment. If you have listened to an episode before and you loved it and you think about it when you think of us, hop on there and give us a comment and let us know that that episode has stuck with you. Or if you have gone somewhere we've talked about, hop on and give a comment about what your own experience was. We just really would love to start hearing your voices.
Absolutely. See y'all next week.
And we'll love together, we'll learn together, explore this whole wide world together. No matter where we are.